At least I know it's what you really think. So they're valuing the authenticity. I also quite like it if they occasionally say they do agree with me. But the point is not so much that. The credibility comes from the authenticity. So that's just a few comments. We can talk more about online in a moment if you wish. But to answer your actual question, the problem with credibility, Joel, and the reason why so many people don't embark on a strategy of building their credibility is credibility is like getting fit. It's hard, it's long, and it's forever.
Yeah.
So you don't wake up one morning and say, let me come up with a strategy that can make me credible by Friday. Credibility is the sum total of your interactions with clients, candidates, and colleagues and suppliers over many years. So you got to play with a straight bat, which is a cricket analogy. So maybe you wouldn't understand it over there, but you've got to, it's how you interact with people and the service delivery and the outcomes that you've created. And then as you do that, when you're talking to a client, you can point to work you've done, outcomes you've created, referees you can bring into the fold, and your brand builds on that. But credibility is also made up of really small things, like how about turning up to meetings on time? How about dressing appropriately? This might sound old school. All the companies I deal with are full of 25 and 35-year-olds, and sometimes they take me to task. And I say, listen, I don't care what you think about this, but if you go into a client meeting and the client's more smartly dressed than you, you lose. That's the end of the story. You lose. And it's not about, wearing a suit to every meeting. If you're placing developers or digital people, then maybe when you go and see your client, and I know you can't see clients now, but in the normal world, maybe when you go and see your client, you dress appropriately. But if you think that it's cool to go and see a guy in a merchant bank in your shorts, you've got it wrong, right? That's a very small part of it, but it is part of it. And by the way, meeting with, you're much more likely, so you send me an email, the opportunity for me to build my credibility with you is minimal. We meet on a Zoom like this, maybe it's a bit better. Meeting in real life is how I'm going to entrench in you the fact that I'm credible. Through the questions I ask, through the knowledge I bring, through the track record I can display, through the empathy I engage, the strategy I come up with to solve your problem. You try and sell exclusivity via email, good fucking luck, right?
Yeah.
You try and sell exclusivity on the phone, yeah, maybe. Face to face, I back myself, 9 times out of 10. Because I'm looking the person in the eye, I'm getting the nuance of their resistance, I'm asking questions, I'm answering them, I'm giving a smile, I'm cracking a joke to reduce the tension. That's it. And that's credibility, but it stems from knowledge, track record, and also quality. You can't fake credibility, not long term.
Yeah, and I think that's a massive challenge within the industry, obviously, because it takes. I think of like how people come into the recruiting industry, for example. It's 6 weeks of training, and then it's a lot of times it's go figure it out, and
100%.
I think the challenge with that is then we get into situations like we're at right now, where you're going to obviously cut 30 to 40% of the people that are probably maybe less than 5 years in the industry, because they never really learned the industry and they're not learning the ins and outs. And so my personal belief is until you get like robust training and there's an actual, I guess, a payout for training people well, because it seems like a lot of agencies, it becomes very individualized and every man for themselves. And there's not an incentive then to bring people in and actually teach them, whether it's the industry and maybe you've been working in the industry for 10 years and you still really don't know anything about the industry. You just built some stronger relationships, but it's a huge issue. So, one of the things you also mentioned, in terms of not faking credibility, I'd love to touch upon that. Where do you think that disconnect is training, or do you think it's? I guess where is this big disconnect in terms of not knowing how to train people up in credibility and be experts in industries? Yeah,
you kind of answered your own question in a way. The real issue is leadership in the staffing industry, because You know, you talked about a 10-year person who maybe doesn't know that much. Man, I have sat opposite people who have said to me, you know, sometimes I make myself very unpopular. This might be one of the ways. I've sat opposite people who tell me they got 10 years experience in recruitment. They know it all. And I've mentioned to them, they don't have 10 years experience. They have 1 year's experience 10 times over. They know better now than they were after 1 year.
Yeah.
Because they've surrounded themselves with their paradigms. They've learned how to do it a certain way, and then they've never grown. They've never added to their skill set. They've never evolved. And that is the typical recruitment consultant. And I don't blame them. I blame the leadership. Because what we typically do in this industry, you touched on it, we hire people, we give them some basic training. As soon as they start to bill, we put a tick next to them and leave them in the corner until they stop billing, and then we get all over them again. And even if their billing comes from filling 1 job out of 4, which is bizarrely dysfunctional. I mean, what industry in the world is happy to do quality work and get paid for only 25% of it? It's ridiculous, but we do that. And so it's a leadership thing. You know, we have plenty of recruiters who have the potential to be consultative, but I mean, I know plenty of recruitment companies that actually say to their staff, do not go and see your clients. That's a waste of time. Get resumes in front of them. You know, just flick resumes, volume. And occasionally, you know, you will occasionally make some placements, maybe enough to keep your job. But you really are only a transactional spamming hack, frankly. And you maybe do it for 6 years, but you're only as good as you were after 6 months. That is the problem in the recruitment industry. It's a leadership issue. We need leaders who are prepared to invest more in. And by the way, those very self-same recruitment companies have 50% staff turnover. That's the average in Australia prior to COVID. 50% a year. The cost embedded in that, the disruption, the fall off in service to clients and candidates because half the people aren't there anymore every year is just disastrous. So, you know, the irony is that while recruitment company leaders and owners are spending time and money with staff turnover and their consultants filling 1 job out of 4, if they just took a deep breath and said, how do we, you know, I sit in board meetings or various conversations with owners of recruitment companies, and they're desperately coming up with ways for their consultants to generate more job orders. And I say, why do you need more job orders? And they look at me as if I've sort of slipped into dementia. We need more job orders because we can fill more jobs. And I'm like, well, no, you don't. You're only filling 1 out of 4. How about you come up with a strategy to move that ratio from 1 out of 4 to 2 out of 5 or 2 out of 4? You double your revenue, no more jobs. And the reason you're only filling 1 out of 4 is you're taking them in competition. You've got half-trained consultants just spamming resumes around town who don't actually understand the brief. You don't take proper qualified job orders. Let's just go back to recruiting 101 and take better qualified job orders, get in front of our clients, get exclusivity, and refer appropriate candidates. We move it from 1 out of 4 to 2 out of 4. We double our income, no extra expense.
Yeah, it seems almost common sense when you put it that way, but I think
it's total common sense. But you know, common sense is not that common, and if common sense was common, we wouldn't have people drink driving and all the rest of it. You know, human beings don't always follow the path of logic, and particularly if, you know, sometimes people who start recruitment companies have been trained that way.
Yeah.
And then they train their people that way. And, you know, I've seen them grappling. I say, that job you're about to accept from a client is in competition with 6 agencies. Why can't you tell the client you would love to work it, but not under those conditions? And they can't do it. I've got to take the job. I might get the right candidate. Why do that? Why not spend your time on the clients who are giving you a job as exclusively and smother them with great service? I mean, if you sell the concept of exclusivity or retainer to a client who's not done it before, and then you deliver on that, and the client gets a great experience, you never have to sell it again.
No.
The client now loves that way.
Well, I think when it comes down to it, it's not knowing how to. It's almost like not knowing the value that you bring, and I think you then have to truly be somebody that's able to bring value in a conversation or in that industry, and you've got to be able to bring something more than a resume at that point. But
I mean, it's interesting you say that, Joel, about value. One of the problems is And by the way, I love this industry. I've been in it 40 years. It's given me everything. I love it. And it's like the reason I feel comfortable to criticize my own industry is because I do love it and I want it to be better. But a lot of recruiters actually don't even believe in their own value because they're not stupid, right? They can see that all they did was flick a resume and now they're going to send an invoice out for $25,000. And they think to themselves, I hear them saying it, gee, that's a lot of money. You know, how much better would it be if every time we send an invoice, not only do we think it was worth it, the client thought it was worth it. That's
huge.
Where we need to head. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I see it happen where, depending on the size of organization you're at, if you're working with, let's say, a mid-sized organization and you fill 8 roles and they pay you $200,000, I mean, immediately they're going to be thinking, well, I could have hired someone internally and they could full-time work for us. They're going to know our culture. So I think, you know, it's hard to win in that situation. But again, it comes down to also being able to articulate then the process that you're going to do that's going to be different to other people. But it's ultimately going to come down to that individual then actually knowing something, being able to develop those relationships. What advice would you give, I guess, in terms of like, I mean, you touched upon it with the 50% of people who are successful in Australia, for example. So you got 50% turnover. You know, that's 50% of people aren't working out. Is that an issue with being able to predict who's going to be successful? Is it training? Like what's the core there? Like, why can't you predict someone that's going to be a good recruiter?
You can. Well, you can increase your hit rate. So the first reason is that many owners of recruitment company, ironically, don't put the effort into recruiting their own staff that they do into recruiting for their clients. Let me give you an example. I don't know if you've read my background, but I've managed and run companies that over 40 years has included thousands of recruiters, thousands.
Yeah.
How many reference check calls, and bear in mind that in this country, reference checking is not only legal, it's standard. How many reference check calls do you think I've got in the last 15 years from people saying, hey, this recruiter used to work for you, what do you think? How many calls do you think I've had?
Man, it's got to be thousands. Got to be 10,000.
It's three.
Wow. So
there, yeah. that tells you, and I'm not exactly hard to find online, am I, mate?
No.
So I have seen direct reports of mine. I'm talking about senior managers who ran Singapore, Hong Kong office for me or UK office, being put into new jobs and nobody calls me for a little bit of a behind the scenes, how was this person?
Interesting.
Right? 3 times in 15 years. So that is an indication of the lack of due diligence that people do. Just an example. But the reason you asked me the question, why have we got high staff turnover? Number one, they hire the wrong people in the first place. Right? There's a lot of rookies hired. In this country, they like to hire a graduate with 2 years of any experience. A good, likely lad or a nice, confident-looking young woman, and put them into recruitment. But they're not drilling down into the core competencies, right? They don't have recruitment experience. That's okay. I was hired into this industry with no recruitment experience.
Yeah.
But you need to look for the core competencies of resilience and empathy and listening skills and sales ability. So that's the first thing. Hire them on. The second thing is short, sporadic, or non-existent training. Right? So people are set up to fail, and that's going to be amplified with a lot of people working from home. What chance does a young recruiter with 3 months experience working from home going to have to succeed in this environment? I can tell you, fuck all chance. I'm glad you can't censor this because I told you I'm authentic. This is how I speak. So they've got no chance. They've got no chance. And then the third thing I should say is ongoing career development. Even if they've been successful, if a recruiter is doing well, we want them to sit in the corner and just keep doing that for 30 years, which is unlikely. We need to have conversations with those people about career paths. Now, that may not be into management. It might be into just to develop their skills as a recruiter and to go from filling 1 job out of 4 to 4 out of 5. That would be a massive career enhancement. They'll earn more money. They'll have higher self-esteem, all those sorts of things. So it's that ongoing managing of the careers and cookie cutter type management of everyone's got to do 50 calls a day and all the rest of it, all the old. I'm a great believer in measuring the activities, but I don't believe in old school KPIs thrust upon people without any nuance. So those are some of the reasons why people just don't work out. And then the laughable, it's not laughable, it's sad, but the next step is that having gone through that, the recruitment company owner goes out and does it again in the hope that they'll eventually hit the jackpot. And they do occasionally. Someone turns out to be a natural fit. But there's no science and there's no ongoing management of the person's career in recruitment. I mean, I'm generalizing. Some people do this extraordinarily well, you know, and they definitely benefit from that. But mostly, and remember, Joel, that in your country and in mine, 80% of recruitment or staffing companies have less than 10 staff. We think of the giants, and there are giants, and there's also some big, medium-sized companies. Obviously, we know about that. But mostly, it's a cottage industry. It's small, and the owner is just a good recruiter who has some courage to go out on his or her own. You know, and that's fantastic. But they don't have mentoring skills. They don't have coaching skills. They don't have the resources or the desire to implement a process because their short-term thinking is that's too expensive. He's got to bill. Now, if he doesn't bill in 3 months, I'll replace him. And that's just a sort of treadmill of dysfunction.
Yeah, well, and it's sad because I've seen that play out before. I've seen people come out of school and they're excited about life, they're excited about it, and then they're kind of sold into what recruiting can be, which everyone knows it's lucrative, you make a lot of money, all of those things. But if you're not even preparing people for, like you said, to be resilient, that they're going to have some of these other skills that are going to push them through times like this. Do you see this time with the pandemic compared to other downturns? Do you see the recruitment industry emerging differently compared to maybe some of the other downturns because of work from home, because of just that change actually in the whole of society? Do you see this as an opportunity for recruiting as a whole to change, or do you think we'll have a little bit of a dip and then a big dip and then come back up and everything will go back to normal? What in terms of the mentality of recruiting, or do you see this as an opportunity to really change these mentalities we're talking about?
So the most important word you used in that question is opportunity. It is an opportunity to change, but it won't automatically change. And you read a lot. You can't open LinkedIn or anybody's thing without someone saying how coronavirus is going to change recruiting. Here's the news. It's not. The vast majority of owners of recruitment companies and recruiters, when the market comes back, are going to be so delighted they've now got jobs to fill. You mark my words, mate. They're going to go back and do everything exactly the way they did it before. That's human nature, and that's what's going to happen. However, there is an opportunity now, the best opportunity we've had in a lifetime, to totally reinvent the way we do it. So some of my clients, with a bit of prompting, are going back into the market now and saying we only take jobs exclusively. There's an example, right? Only. And they're reinventing, and they're hiring different styles of recruiters, and they're implementing new technology. They've changed their commission structures. And yes, they get, people think that just by working from home, that's a change. It's not a change if those people are managed with the same KPIs, the same feed delivery model, the same technology. There's no difference at all.
Yeah.
It's just fluff. Right? So real change in terms of how we deliver the service, the relationship building, the technology we employ, parts of the job that we automate, our fee structure, maybe flipping into slightly different markets even. Those are the opportunities we should be doing right now. And those recruitment organizations that take that opportunity will absolutely fly as the thing recovers. The rest will go back and do everything the same. And if they think, and I say this all the time to people and they look at me dumbly, if you think that just having someone work from home 3 days a week is a substantive change to your model, you're just dreaming. If you ask them to do exactly the same job, that's not a change. Yeah. A change is saying you only take jobs exclusively.
Yeah,
right? That's a change. A change is automating huge parts of your job, but creating time so your recruiters can get in front of customers more. That's change. That's going to make a difference. And that's the opportunity. That's what I'm excited about. And I hope people do that, but a lot won't. A lot won't at all.
No,
they may not survive as a result.
Well, I think, I think that kind of change for most recruiters would be, would be exciting. We got Adam on here as well, so I just throw this up. Adam says, "Hey all." I think, man, to me, like hearing this, like I'm inspired to put value in myself and the clients that I'm working with, and say, the reason you're working with me is because obviously, you have your we have the same database, right? Everybody has LinkedIn. Everybody's got Zoom info. Like the whole database selling. I mean, that's long gone. But when you're working with me, you're working with someone that not only is going to know your company and the industry, but I'm going to be able to advise you on different recruiting decisions. And I think that's how you get that credibility. And instead of, and it means too that I think it's people getting used to losing those job orders as well. And I think that's a big mindset change for people to be able to value themselves, to say, yeah, I'm actually not going to work on this. I'll find somebody else that is willing to go exclusive, and I'll work with them. And I think that's how you build a long-term relationship. I mean, it's always going to be that long-term relationship's always going to be built the way that you said, where you build that credibility, you show up, you execute. I think everything else is just a hamster wheel, and it's tiring, and it creates the issues we have. And then you talk about work from home, mental health and those types of things are becoming more and more important for people, and particularly people coming into the workforce who are younger, who are going to be doing more of the recruiting. So you got to figure out a way to almost make the job less stressful, more transparent, and more partnership based. But if you've got people who have done the same thing for 20 years and they've made millions and millions of dollars, it's a tough sell, because they go, well, I've been doing this for 20 years and it still makes money now. But I think there's going to be that intersection where what you're talking about long term, it's going to have to come into play. And people who don't adopt it, they're going to face a real hard challenge.
For those big billers of the past who I begin to call yesterday's heroes, it's the law of diminishing returns. They're working harder and harder for less return. And as we come out of this, they will find that their success diminishes because they haven't adjusted to the way what the market wants from recruitment agencies. And this whole work from home thing, I'm completely on board with flexibility and making it easier for people to balance their lives. But time will tell. Those who say we're going to run these businesses 100% people from home, I think have knee-jerked it. I think there's not enough consideration given to the requirement for people to learn from osmosis, the need we have for contact with our team members, collaboration, learning from each other. So I think that's all got to be figured out. Certainly, I think, when I talk to my clients, the thing that's the big hurdle that jumped in their minds is that their staff can be trusted, because we've got virtually no examples of people taking the mickey, working from home, not doing their jobs. People are working hard. That's not an issue. They're trusted. That's the big thing. And so that's good. But what is the impact on a 26-year-old recruiter working from home? Not hearing those conversations, not that mentor just putting his hand on his shoulder and saying, "Hey mate, you could have said that differently." I mean, I still say things today that I learned from hearing across the room 30 years ago. Yeah. And that's not going to be present for people working entirely from home. So there's a lot to be worked out. And the other thing is, working from home is great when the results are good. If you've got a good recruiter who suddenly their performance goes offline, it's not working, they're not billing, it's not. How do you evaluate where they've gone wrong? You can't hear their conversations. You can see their activities maybe through your technology, if that's what you've got, but you don't know the quality of that activity. You don't know their morale, their mojo. You've got no idea of how to help that underperforming person back on board if you're doing it remotely. And I don't think people are giving enough thought. So I'm not arguing for everyone's got to be back in the office. I'm actually arguing for a very carefully thought out hybrid situation using technology and also get together. And plus, I think it does depend on the person to a degree. Some people work very effectively on their own. Others struggle after an hour. They need to engage.
Yeah.
So it's got to be worked out yet. It's not as simple. I do not know why some of these big companies in the middle of the pandemic made this declaration that their staff will never come back to work.
This doesn't help
Biggest
anyone.
belief to me.
Well,
I don't know why you would do that. There was no need to do that. You might say you wanted to come back for 6 months or a year, but then evaluate and learn more. It was very premature. I might be wrong. Who the hell am I to tell Twitter they're wrong? Maybe they're right, but we'll see.
Well, I mean, I think it's the way I looked at remote work for a long time is, I think if someone's performing well, you should have the choice to be able to work from wherever they want. And as soon as there's, like you said, dip in performance or something changes and they need some coaching, it's going to be hard to get away from face-to-face coaching effectively. It's going to be hard to implement that in a work from home environment. And honestly, I don't know why we can't have the choice, because as an adult, we've got the technology to be able to work from wherever we want. I know for me, if I get around a lot of people, I have that tendency to get distracted. I start talking to people and it's fun, but sometimes it is helpful for me to spend that day at home to really just crack on with the work and really, really focus. But I'd love to have that choice between the two. And I think if the performance there, I'm not sure why you can't have that. But I think, potentially if you are new into recruiting, I mean, that is way I've sat across from people who have 20, 30 years experience, and you hear the conversations, you hear how they're handling the pre-close, you hear how they're handling the counteroffer, you hear how they're handling the client calls. That is all it's like you say, you can't replace that. So that's a great.
Yeah, I mean that is a very important point, building on what you said, where you said you should have the experienced person who's doing well should have the choice to work from where they want. Maybe. On the other hand, somebody like you or somebody like me, as you've just said, we can reflect on our success and say a lot of it's due to the osmosis of listening to other good people, better than us, more experienced than us, talking, just the way they handled it. And then there was a counter offer in the corner over there. Then there was an annoyed candidate in the reception and how they handled that. That's how we learned. Well, if you've said all your experienced people never have to be in the office, how's the next generation going to learn, mate?
It's going to be tough. Yeah,
it's going to be tough. It's going to be impossible.
Well, I think they're going to see the retention rate go down even lower, and man, it's a big deal.
So I've got a solution for it. I'm just saying that I don't think people have thought it through, and I think there's a lot of very glib comments around recruitment's going to change. I told you that won't happen unless we change it ourselves. We configure our own futures. Every recruitment company, every recruiter will decide whether they're going to use this coronavirus as an opportunity to emerge better, or they'll decide, I'm just going to go back and be the same as I was. And the second thing is, we've learned we can work from home effectively, but this is a marathon, mate. And a marathon is 42 kilometers. And I reckon as far as coronavirus is concerned and its effect on recruitment, we're on about kilometer number 5. Right? Yeah. That's where we are. And there's a lot of people talking like we're on kilometer 41. We're nowhere near that. There's a lot to evolve, a lot of learning, a lot of thinking, and work from home is just one of the things that's got a lot of work to be done to get the right balance for the best outcome. Not only for the individual, as you said, you might be great working from home, but what about the 24-year-old who would learn from you or me or somebody else who no longer has that opportunity?
That's worse than being in a room by yourself with just a phone saying, make it happen. I mean, that is exactly what it is. It's even worse because you can't step into another room with people. Well, I know we've been on for a while. I just wanted to quickly ask you, in terms of content in the digital space, why do you think you've been such an early adopter of? Because I feel like with your blog, with your LinkedIn content, obviously you've been a pretty early adopter with a lot of the online content. But I see a lot of other CEOs and I see a lot of owners of recruitment firms that just aren't leveraging social media. They're not leveraging any branding. Why do you think that is? Is it fear? Is it accountability?
I know exactly why it is. And it's because in 2010, I was working with a company called Eloquent. Eloquent is an American company. I was the CEO, the international CEO, which meant all their business outside of America. So that was 35 offices in Asia and Europe. I was the CEO of that company, and we had a great 10 years. I was there 10 years. Then the what we call the GFC, the global financial, the Lehman Brothers downturn of 2009, 2010 impacted that business. And as a result, I was able to be involved in a management buyout of 10 offices of Eloquent. So with their support, myself and the senior management, we bought 10 offices, UK, France, Asia, Australia. And we started this new company called Firebrand. So I was now CEO of this company called Firebrand. It was 2010. We thought we'd timed the market and we were going to boom in the recovery. But now we had 10 offices in 8 countries and no money because we were a startup. I mean, we had revenue because we were active, but we weren't like we weren't funded by Eloquent, we were a separate company. So we began to think we could use this new thing called social media 10 years ago, right? And that included LinkedIn, which was well established, but Twitter was only emerging. People weren't using Facebook effectively, and all the rest of it. And blogging was, still a new thing almost. And so I decided with my senior people that we would do that. And I decided to take the lead myself. So I set up the Savage Truth blog, and got on Twitter, started engaging on LinkedIn, and we trained all our staff. And we built this business on the back of a social media marketing strategy, which in those days, even that phrase was unheard of.
Yeah.
It was 10 years ago, 11 years ago. So initially, all my activities were around growing the Firebrand brand, right? So the Savage Truth blog was aimed at not recruiters in the very early days, but clients and candidates of Firebrand, which is in digital marketing recruitment, and the Twitter thing, and all our staff were on Twitter, and we trained them on engaging on LinkedIn and all the rest of it. But then when I sold Firebrand a few years later, and I decided, I think it was 7 years ago, I decided, I was in my 50s, I was going to consult back to the industry. I really had quite a high visibility in this country in recruitment. I've done a lot of speaking and I've been on the council of the industry thingo. I decided I would use social media to engage with my audience. So that's how the Savage Truth was born. And, it's been a wonderful learning experience, and it's led to massive opportunities. I don't do any marketing or business development. I have no need for that because people come to me. I don't say that arrogantly. I do have a lot of experience, but that's good. That's how it went. And, I either get invited to speak at conferences all over the world, literally. If you read the chapter in my book on that, there'd be 30 countries I've spoken in, paid gigs, right? And that's all from social content awareness building. Because after all, I'm sitting in Sydney. I'm an unemployed ex-recruiter. Why the hell would someone invite me to speak in Boston or Singapore or London?
Yeah.
Online brand.
So what, can anybody build an online brand? Or, why do you think more people, because I look at it and I see someone like you that's got a lot of experience. You've started companies, you've sold companies, you've led companies, you've got credibility more than most. But why wouldn't if I was a recruitment owner and I'm looking at particular this time and I'm going, okay, we're not getting out to our clients as much. We need to be more active on digital. What do you think's holding other people back from even just starting? I see people that are afraid to post on LinkedIn every day. What is that mental hurdle for building the brand? Why do you think most people aren't doing that within the recruiting industry?
Well, there's a number of reasons. First of all, a lot of senior people actually don't understand or believe in the effectiveness of online brand building for their company or their staff. Yeah. They think it's frivolous. They think it's, no one. I think that's changed. Most people are getting a handle on that now, but that's the first thing. The second thing is to build a brand. It's a long-term, hard exercise. So people say it doesn't cost money. It does, in effort and in time.
Yeah.
And our industry is probably the industry that's most predisposed to wanting short-term results on our efforts. And, you know, I'm the most guilty. There's no one in the world who said to me, Joel, how many placements have you made this week? How many client orders have you got this week? No one has said that more than me. I'm running recruitment businesses for 35 years. So I'm a short-term guy too, but I learned that in building a brand, you can't put 3 posts out on LinkedIn and expect business is going to come your way. You know, it's months and it's consistency. You have to do it every day. So I'm blogging every week, but I'm tweeting and there's status updates every day. There's things you can do. You can automate it, you know, as well as I do. There are things you can do, and maybe I don't try as hard as I used to, but a company has to be committed to it, and so does the individual.
Yeah.
The other thing is you've got to take the time to build an audience. I mean, you can put out, it's a content marketing strategy, but you can put out the best content in the world, and if no one sees it, it's like putting on a play in an empty theater. What's the point? Right? So you've got to build an audience, and that audience has to be the audience you're trying to connect with. Right? So the Savage Truth blog is aimed very much at recruiters and recruitment owners, and the content meets that need. And I've grown that audience, same on Twitter, same on LinkedIn over the years. So you've got to build the audience, and you're conscious have to go in the early days. So for example, in the early days, very early days of Twitter, I'm talking about 10 years ago, I would actually follow people on Twitter that I wanted to follow me back. And I would do that every night, watching TV with my kids bouncing all over me. They're all bloody left home now. That's how long ago it was. And I would follow people and half of them would follow me back. And that's how I built my audience. So it was hard work, right? Consciously doing it. And then it's about content, and it's putting out quality content. And the content has got to speak to your audience, right? So a lot of people put out recruitment companies. You go and look at their blogs. It's all about interviewing and, you know, sick to death of that. What we want is information that's of interest to our audience. So if you're placing quantity surveyors in the north of England, you need to put out content that's interesting to quantity surveyors in the north of England, right? Not generic stuff. If you look at me, my stuff is all totally of interest. Well, it's aimed to be of interest to my audience, which is recruiters and owners of recruitment companies, right? So you speak to your audience. You need to put out quality content. You need to share it far and wide, and then you need to engage, right? So my attitude is this: social media is no different to be sitting opposite you at a dinner party. We're at a dinner party. You turn and you say something to me. I don't reply. I just look away. You will regard that as intensely rude, and you'll never forgive me for it. So if I put out stuff on social, somebody responds, I respond. That is very hard to do as it gets bigger. That's why even a small recruitment company needs a dedicated person for engagement. And then generosity is part of it. You need to, you know, a lot of people go on social media and their first thing is, what can I get? You know, and they pump out jobs on social media. I want candidates. They pump out testimonials. Look how good I am. That is not what it's for. It's about generosity. I'm spending a whole fucking hour here with you, mate, talking about recruitment when I'd rather be having a coffee up at the coffee shop. No, I wouldn't. I'd rather be talking to you. But I mean, it's about generosity. It's about giving. Right?
Well,
so what does that mean? Putting out good content, helping people with answers, connecting people.
Yeah.
So it's counterintuitive. You know, it's about giving, and then you will get. And so if you just played back what I've said over the last 5 minutes, you will quickly realize that building a brand is hard work. And that is why most people don't do it.
Well, I just wanted, just in terms of engagement, Liam just said, Greg Savage, legend. See, I called it at the beginning of the show there. I'm not the only one. And then Annie just said, Joel, great insight. Love how he talks about recruiting and short-term, long-term brand building. Great points about content and audience too. Well, that's why I wanted to kind of end things up. And I just want to say the insight and like just the futuristic look and where you're coming from is it's inspiring. And the fact is like you've actually done, you know, especially when it comes to brand building, that's something I'm really passionate about. And I put a lot of work into the last year, and a lot of people within the industry kind of looked at me funny. I haven't accomplished near as much as you, but I'm putting out content that is relevant to people I'm looking to connect with. So but it's hard work, and so to hear you say that it's encouraging to hear that, and it's inspiring, and I know it'll be inspiring to a lot of people as well.
I wouldn't be comparing yourself to me or anyone else, mate. All you need to do is to do the best you can within the context of your business goals. But what I would say to you, without and to anyone who's listening, thank you to those people who said those nice things. I really appreciate that. Honestly, while social media has been hard work, and while it does create sometimes a burden, because I get sent a lot of questions, and I will have an inbox full of questions as a result of this, and I will answer them all. And that is hard work, I'll admit. But it's given me, I was already quite successful at recruitment and all the rest of it, but it's given me a lot of things that I really value. I've made a lot of friends around the world in recruitment. I mean, good friends.
Yeah.
I've been to the UK and spoken at conferences and developed relationships, which I've managed to help them over the years. They've helped me. So it's been great relationships, endless business opportunities. I mean, I'm on the board of 12 recruitment companies, and at least half of those came from people who only heard of me through online presence in the first instance. Speaking gigs all over the world, which are very cleverly always timed to coincide with rugby and football matches that I want to watch. So there's that.
Nice.
And also a sense of, I get notes where people say what you did on social really helped me, and it solved the problem for me. And that is probably the best thing. To think that, I built a career based on my own needs for financial security and everything else, and but it's great to be able to think that somebody was struggling with something, that through my mistakes and cock-ups that I've made over the years, I've got some insight to share, and then that saves the person that problem. That's a really good thing, I think.
Yeah, it's massive. Well, that's how I came across you, obviously, and I would echo all of that. So Greg, I appreciate it. Once again, guys, this is the book, Savage Truth. Definitely pick it up. I would say, even if you're not even in recruiting, if you just want to be inspired by someone that's built businesses and understands and is futuristic, pick up the book. And it's not for profit, right? All of the money goes to.
No, well, it is for profit for the publisher, no doubt. But what I've done, this book, I am encouraging you to buy it, because I do believe if you're in recruitment or staffing or even in leadership, there's a lot of leadership stuff there, it will be helpful. Not because I'm particularly clever, because I'm actually definitely not, but it's because I have managed to capture the learnings from a lot of time in the field and a lot of mistakes that I've made. I am donating any proceeds from this book to charity. So you don't write a book to make money unless you're writing Harry Potter. I could make money much better, much quicker other ways. But I do think it will help people in recruitment. So go to my website, gregsavage.com.au. There is a link there saying the Savage Truth book. And in your country, I think, most countries have got a link to how you can get that book. So I'd love people to buy it. And I hope you'll find it useful. And thank you, Joel, for having me on your show. I love that you're doing stuff like this. I hope it helps you, but it's also potentially helping others, which is a good thing, particularly at the moment, because I think there's very few of us in some need of a helping hand at the moment. It's not the easiest time.
100%. Yeah, and definitely learned a ton. I know everybody out there learned a ton as well, and obviously we'll download this episode and I'll be able to distribute that to you as well. So definitely appreciate you taking the time out of your day this morning, and glad to be connected. And everybody else, I'm going to be live tomorrow as well with Annie, who chimed in here as well. So we'll see you guys tomorrow. Greg, again, appreciate it. And if you just want to stay just 1 second here, I'm going to end this broadcast.
Thanks, Joe.